Greetings, everyone. Welcome to a special extra episode of Lore of Warcraft. Stay a while and listen to Chapter 3 as we... there's a little night bug. Yeah. Let's find out what happens. Illidan just got his eyeballs burned out of his head. Let's see how he recuperates from that. I'm sure that felt awesome. See if he gets some kind of special powers or something. I think he can see something now. The Burning Legion renewed its attack with undiminished fury. While the defenders ever needed to sleep and eat, the demons did not have any such weaknesses. They fought night and day until cut down, only retreating when the odds were too great. Even then they did so, making each foot of land retaken paid with much blood. But now they again found their adversaries refreshed. Now, instead of merely the Night Elf host, there were others who fought. Almost doubling the host's strength, the Tauren, dwarves, and other races added a new and desperately needed edge to the defenders' strength. For the first time in days, it was the Legion that failed, pushed back within a night's ride of ruined Suramar. Yet, despite this success, Malfurion felt little renewed hope. It was not just that he had come to see his devastated home as the constant barometer of victory and defeat, the battle continuously ebbing and flowing within sight of the once beautiful settlement. Rather, it was the very core of the host's new power that bothered him. True, Ronan had managed to force upon Lord Stareye the new allies, but the prejudiced noble had made what should have been a common cause a reluctant truce. The Night Elves did not truly fight alongside the others. Stareye kept his people to the left and middle flanks, the others to the right. There was little communication and almost no interaction between the various groups. Night Elves dealt only with Night Elves, dwarves with dwarves, and so on. Such an alliance, if it could laughingly be called that, was surely doomed to defeat. The demons would compensate for the new numbers and attack harder than ever. I thought it was going to go down that way. What coordination there had to be had been foisted upon the unfortunate Maiev Shadowsong. The druid wondered that the guard captain did not hate the outsiders, for they had brought him nothing but calamity. Yet Jared took on his new tasks with the dour dedication that he had the previous ones, for which Malfurion had to admire him. In truth, whatever the benefit of Ronan's, Brox's, or Malfurion's presence, Jared's work matched it. He coordinated all matters between the factions, by necessity filtering out dangerous arguments and slurs and creating something cohesive. In truth, the captain now had at least as much to do with the host's strategy as the pompous Stareye. He should be the leader. Malfurion only prayed that the noble would never realize all this. Ironically, it appeared Captain Shadowsong certainly didn't. In his mind, he was merely obeying orders. Ronan, who had been resting atop a rock overseeing the battlefield, abruptly straightened. "They're coming again!" Brox leapt to his feet with a grace his hulking form belied. The graying orc swung his axe once, twice, then started for the front line. Malfurion leapt atop his Nightsaver, one of the huge tusked panthers used by his people for travel and war. Horns sounded. The weary host stiffened in readiness. Different notes echoed along the ranks as the various factions prepared, and moments later the battle was again joined. The defenders and the demons collided with an audible crash. Instantly grunts and cries filled the air. Roaring a challenge, Brock severed the head of a Felguard, then shoved the quivering torso into the demon behind. The orc caught a bloody swath, quickly leaving more than half a dozen demons dead or dying. Atop another Nightsaber, Ronan also battled. He did not merely cast spells, although like Malfurion he constantly kept watch for the Eredar, the Legion's warlocks. The Eredar had suffered badly during past campaigns, but they were ever a threat, striking when least expected. For now, however, Ronan utilized his magic in conjunction with his combat skills. Astride the Nightsaver, the human-wielded twin blades created solely from magic. The blue streams of energy stretched more than a yard each, and when the wizard brought them into play, they wreaked havoc on a scale with the orc. Demon armor made for no resistance, Felguard weapons broke as if fragile glass against them. Ronan fought with a passion that Malfurion could well understand, for the red-haired figure had let slip of a mate and coming children whose fate also rested in defeating the Legion. As Malfurion was with Tyrande and Illidan, so too was Ronan with his faraway family. The druid fought no less powerfully, even though his spells sought communion with nature. From one of the many pouches on his belt, he brought forth several spiny seeds, the type that clung to one's garments when passing among the plants, hitchhikers. Holding his filled palm up, he blew gently on the seeds. They rushed forward into the air as if taken by a wind of hurricane strength. Their numbers multiplied 1,000-fold as they spread out over the oncoming demons, almost turning into a dust storm. Roaring, the horrific warriors plowed through the cloud without care, their only interest the blood of their defenders. However, only a few steps later, the first of the demons suddenly stumbled and clutched his stomach. Another imitated him, then another. Several dropped their weapons and were immediately cut down by eager night elves. Those who were not suddenly grew extremely bloated. Their stomachs and chests expanded well beyond proportion. Several of the tusked figures fell to the ground writhing. From inside one still standing, scores of sharp dagger-like points burst through flesh and armor. Ichor drenched the screaming demon's form. He spun around once, then collapsed dead. His body lay pincushioned, all from swelling seeds within. And around him others fell, dozens at a time, all suffering the same dire fate. Malfurion felt some queasiness when he saw the results, but then considered the merciless evil of the enemy. He could ill afford any compassion for those who lived only for mayhem and terror. It was kill or be killed. But despite the many demons who perished, there were always more. The Night Elves' lines began to give in as they were especially hammered. They had fought longest against the Burning Legion, and so were most weary. Archimond was too clever not to make use of the weak point. More and more tusked warriors poured into the crumbling area. Fell beasts harried the lines, and from above the Doomguard dropped down on distracted soldiers, crushing in skulls or burying lances in chests and backs. Ofttimes they would take a night elf or two, drag them up high, then drop the helpless figures among the host. Falling among their fellows, the soldiers became missiles, slaying those on the ground as well as themselves. Shock warfare. An explosion threw several night elves yards into the air. From the gaping crater arose a blazing infernal. Powerful of body but weak of mind, the demon lived only to crush anything in its path. It barreled into a line of soldiers, tossing them aside like leaves. Before Malfurion could act, Brox met the infernal head-on. It seemed impossible that even the orc could hold back such a giant, but somehow Brox did. The infernal came to a dead stop, and from his roar the demon found this quite frustrating. He raised a fiery fist and tried to pound the orc's skull into his ribcage, but Brox held the staff of his axe up, the thin handle somehow blocking the deadly blow without cracking. Then, moving faster than the infernal, Brox shoved aside the demon's hand and jammed the axe head into his adversary's chest. For all his vaunted might, the infernal was no less protected against the magical weapon than his comrades. No less protected, no more protected. The blade sank in several inches. From out of the gaping wound, green flames shot out. Brox grunted as he shifted to avoid the flames, then removed the axe for another strike. Although wavering, the infernal was not yet defeated. Roaring, he slammed both fists together, then struck the earth with them. The thundering smash sent tremors toward Brox, throwing him off his feet. Immediately the demon charged, intent on trampling the orc to death, but as he neared, Brox, who had managed to keep his weapon, positioned it against the ground like a pike. The infernal impaled himself. He struggled to reach Brox, but the veteran warrior kept his position. In his fury, the infernal only worsened matters. The axe sunk deeper, causing a new gush of fire that came within an inch or two of the orc. With a shudder, the huge demon finally stilled. But, despite such personal victories, the Burning Legion relentlessly pushed forward. Malfurion tried to summon up some of the emotion that had enabled him to push back the horde in the past, but could not. Tyranda's kidnapping had left that part of him drained. He saw Lord Stareye far to the left, the noble berating the struggling soldiers there. Stareye was a far contrast to his predecessor. Ravencrest would have been as blood and grime-soaked as his troops, but Stareye looked immaculate. He was surrounded by his personal guard, who let nothing unseemly near him, even at such a critical moment. Then, to the druid's surprise, a shaggy figure charged past him, heading for the near breach. Another and another followed, Gargantuan Tauren, moving up to the weakened line and adding their astounding strength. With a gusto worthy of Brox, they attacked the demons, cutting down several of the tusked warriors in the first strike. Among them, Malfurion made out Holn at the head, his eagle spear impaling one Felguard with such force the tip broke through the back. Holn shook off the dead demon with ease, then parried a wild swing by another. The lead Tauren grinned wide. Yeah, he's cool. I like Holn. And with the Tauren came an unlikely figure. Maiev Shadowsong, blade already blooded, shouted to the huge beastmen with him. To Malfurion's surprise, the group shifted as if obeying some command. They spread out, enabling the Night Elves to rebuild their own lines and come to the aid of their rescuers. Priestesses of Elune also materialized, the warrior maidens a striking group, especially in contrast to their peaceful ways before the coming of the Legion. Their appearance stung Malfurion, though, for it increased again his guilt that he had not managed to keep Tyrande out of the demon's clutches. Astride their animals, the priestesses used sword and bow against the enemy. However, among those most proficient was one not truly a priestess. Shorter than the rest, young Chandra's Feathermoon lacked a summer or two before she should have been officially able to become a novice. But drastic times demanded drastic measures. Mirinda, the sister acting in Taranda's absence, had granted Chandras a place in their depleted ranks. Now clad in slightly oversized armor taken from a fallen compatriot, the newest of the Mother Moon's daughters fired off 3 bolts, all of which scored perfect strikes in the throats of the demons. The Legion's progress halted. The defenders began to push back. Malfurion and Ronan added their powers to the task, and the Night Elves retook ground. In the midst of the sisterhood, there was a sudden shriek. 2 of the armored priestesses, their bodies contorted and crushed by their very armor. Even dead, their expressions revealed the agony that the compressing metal had put them through. Malfurion's eyes narrowed, and he gasped. One of them was Mirinda. "Eridar!" snarled Ronan. He raised a hand toward the northwest. But before the wizard could strike back, a fount of flame erupted from that very direction. Malfurion sensed the distant warlock's own agony as the flames engulfed him. "My sincere regrets for so delayed a return," muttered Krasis, the source of that retribution. The dragon mage stood a short distance behind the pair. "I was forced to make the return in stages," he added with bitterness. No one condemned him, not after all he had done. Still, it was clear that Krasis would not so easily forgive himself. "We've pushed them back again," declared Ronan. There was no enthusiasm in his words, just like we did the time before, and the time before. The battle retreated from them. Now that matters were once more in the hands of the defenders, the Sisters of Elune turned to their true vocation, dealing with the wounded. They moved among the soldiers, and a few even went to tend the Tauren, albeit with some clear reservations. Battle horns made the trio look to where Lord Stareye rode. The noble waved his sword around and pointed at the burning legion. It was clear that he was taking full credit for the host's latest advance. Krasis shook his head. "Would that Brox had reached Ravencrest in time." "He did his best, I'm sure," Malfurion responded. "I have no quarrel with the orc concerning his effort, young one. It is fate with whom I ever battle. Come, let us take this reprieve to see if we can aid the sisterhood. There are plenty of wounded to go around." There were indeed. Malfurion put to good use another aspect of his training. Cenarius had taught him much concerning those plants and other life that could ease pain and heal wounds. His talents were not so proficient as that of most of the priestesses, but he left his charges in much better condition than he found them. He's off healing. Among the wounded, they located Jared. The captain sat near his resting Nightsaber as a sister looked to a long gash in the officer's arm. "I've tried to convince her it's nothing," he remarked sourly as they approached. "The armor protected me fairly well." "The Burning Legion's weapons are often poisoned," Krasis explained. "Even a slight wound might prove treacherous." The pale mage dipped his head toward the officer. "Quick thinking out there. You saved the situation. I only pleaded with the Tauren hold to give me a few of his people to save mine, then asked the dwarves to make sure I hadn't weakened the Tauren lines. As I said, quick thinking. The Night Elves and the Bullmen fought well together when it came to it. Would that Erstwhile commander saw that. The moment I arrived, I perceived there was no true cohesion among the allies." Ronan smirked. "Could you expect any better from Lord Stareye?" "Alas, no." They were interrupted by the arrival of a senior priestess. She was tall and moved like a Nightsaber herself. Her face was not unattractive, but her expression was severe. The sister's skin was a shade paler than most of her people. For some reason, despite that, she reminded Malfurion of someone. They said they saw you," she commented blandly to Jared. He looked at her blankly, as if not certain she actually stood there. "Maiev." "Awesome. She's one of the coolest." "It's been long since we saw one another, little brother." "Oh, that's where that name comes from." Now the physical resemblance became more apparent. The captain disengaged himself from the other priestess's efforts and stood to face his sibling. Even though he stood taller than her, somehow Jared seemed to look up at Maiev. Is it Maiev? I don't know. Since you entered the moon goddess's service and chose the temple in Hajiri as the place for your studies. It's where Kalothera ascended to the stars, Maiev countered, referring to a celebrated high priestess from centuries past. Many in the sisterhood considered Kalothera almost a demigoddess. It was far from home. Jared suddenly seemed to recall the others. He looked at them, saying, "This is my older sister, Maiev." "Maiev, these are..." The senior priestess all but ignored Malfurion and Ronan, her gaze strictly on Krasis. Like the rest of the sisterhood, she evidently saw that he was special, even if she did not understand why. Maiev went down on one knee before Jared could continue, declaring, "I am honored in your presence, Elder One." Expressionless, Graces answered, "There is no need to kneel before me. Rise, sister, and be welcome among us. You and yours were timely in your appearance today." Jared's sibling stood with pride. "The Mother Moon guided us well, even if it meant the sacrifice of Mirinda and some others. We saw the line breaking. We would have arrived before the bullmen if not for the greater distance we had to cover." She glanced in the direction the Tauren had gone. "Adept reaction for their kind." "It is your brother who coordinated all," the mage explained. "It is Jared who may have saved the host." "Jared?" Maev's tone indicated some disbelief, but when Graces nodded, she buried that disbelief and tipped her head to the captain. "A simple officer of the city guard playing commander. Fortune was with you this time, brother." He simply nodded, his eyes cast to the side. Ronan, however, did not let Maiev slide pass. Fortune? Good common sense is what it was. The priestess shrugged off the incident. "Little brother, you are introducing us." "Forgive me, Maiev, the elder mage is Crisis. To his side is the wizard Ronan." "Such illustrious visitors are welcome in this time," she interrupted. "May the blessing of Elune be upon you." "And this," the captain continued, "is Malfurion Stormrage, the—" Maev's eyes burned into the druid's. "Yes, you are known to one of our sisters, Tyrande Whisperwind." Considering that Tyrande had become High Priestess, albeit for only a short period before her kidnapping, the remark was not one Malfurion found respectful. "Yes, we grew up together." "We mourn our loss. I fear her inexperience betrayed her. It would have been better for her if her predecessor had chosen one more seasoned." There was a subtle implication that Maiev referred to herself. Biting back his anger, Malfurion said, "There was no fault by her. The battle had spread everywhere. She came to my defense, but was injured, unconscious. During the chaos that followed, servants of the demons took her." He met the other priestess's steely gaze. "And we will get her back." Jared's sister nodded. "I will pray to Elune that it is so." She looked to the captain. "I'm glad you weren't injured too badly, little brother. Now, if you'll forgive me, I must attend to the other sisters. Mirinda's loss means we must quickly decide on a new leader. She had not yet chosen one herself." With a bow that extended mostly to Crisis, Maiev ended, "Again, may the blessings of Elune be upon you." When she was far away, Ronan grunted and said, "A cheerful, friendly sort, your sister." "She's very dedicated to the traditional teachings of Elune," Jared responded defensively. "She's always been very serious." "One cannot fault her for her dedication," Crisis remarked, "providing it does not blind her to the paths taken by others." Jared was saved from further defense of Maiev by Brox's return. The orc had a satisfied grin on his wide face. "She is awesome, but she does go into her own little path of darkness." "Good battle. Many deaths to sing of. Many warriors to praise for the blood they've spilled." "How lovely," muttered Ronan. "Tauren are good fighters. Welcome comrades in any war." The hulking green warrior came to a halt, resting his axe on the ground. "Not as good as orcs, but almost." Crisis eyed the direction of the battle. "Another temporary reprieve at best, even with the joining of the other races. This cannot continue. We must turn the tide once and for all." "But that would mean the dragons," his former protege interjected, "and they don't dare do anything, not so long as Deathwing has the demon soul." Ronan saw no reason to call the black dragon by his original name, Neltharion, anymore. "No, I fear they dare not. We saw what happened when the blue dragons tried." Malfurion frowned. He thought of Tyrande. Nothing could truly be done for her unless the Burning Legion was thwarted, and they would need everyone, especially the dragons, to accomplish that. But the dragons could not face the demon soul, so that meant... "Then we've got to take it from the black," he suddenly announced. Even from Brox, ever willing to leap into any battle, the druid received a wide stare. Jared shook his head in dismay, and Ronan eyed Malfurion as if he had gone completely mad. Yet Crisis, after his initial surprise, gave the Night Elf a speculative look. "Malfurion is correct, I am afraid. We must do it." "Crisis, you can't be serious," the Dragon Mage cut off the wizard. "I am. I had already vaguely considered it myself. But we don't even know where Deathwing is. He shielded himself even better than the other dragons." "That is true. I have considered some ancient spells, but none so far that I believe will have much success. I will attempt them, and if they fail, I will then have to—" "I think I can do it," Malfurion interrupted. "I think I can find him through the Emerald Dream. I don't believe he sealed himself off from it as the palace has done." Graces looked quite impressed by the druid. "You may very well be right, young one," he considered further. But even if he has made such an error, there is of course the danger that Neltharion will still sense you. He did, as you mentioned earlier, try to track you inside the dream. I've learned to be more careful. I'll do it. It's the only way to save her. To save us. The cowled figure placed a gloved hand on Malfurion's shoulder. We will do what we can for her, too. I'll start immediately. No. You need rest first. For her sake as well as yours, you need to be at your best. If you make a mistake or are discovered by him, all will be lost. Malfurion nodded, but in his disappointment there was now some hope, however slight. True, Neltharion might be prepared, but the dragon was obsessive, single-minded. His megalomania might work against him. I'll do as you say, he told the mage, but there's also one other thing I've got to do then. There's someone I need to speak with who may better my chances. Krasis bowed his head in agreement and understanding. Cenarius, you need to speak with the Forest Lord. Alright, so we have Maiev Shadowsong. That's cool, joining the fray. So we get another hero. And it looks as though we're going to have an opportunity for him to develop his druid skills even more. Is he going to level up and get some transformation powers, some metamorphosis? We shall see in the next episode of Lore of Warcraft. This episode's in the pipes, 5x5. Look forward to it. Thank you as always for your time and attention. Adios.